Hey guys, this is Mike.
And Joe.
From Deep Wood, Force of Will.
The deepest of woods.
Deepest of woods. So I'm here right now profiling the deck that I brought to ARG Philly. I went 3-3, didn't do too well, but it was a really good learning experience. I learned a lot about what I have to do for the next event and what to do in preparation for most of these events, and what decks not to bring, like this one.
Also, you also learned how to get punished for Regalia.
I learned how to get punished by drawing 5 non-Regalia, putting 5 non-Regalia back into my deck, and then mulliganing into 5 non-Regalia, and then filtering for a non-Regalia, and then opening Rules Memoria. But that's besides the point. We'll get into that later. So I brought my own creation, actually, to this event. I brought Skittle Fairies, as I like to call it. It's kind of pays homage to the old Alice's World deck, where you get out Gwiber as early as possible, and you start beating their face in with Adombralis. So it was a really nice idea, and the combos happened every so often, but due to some poor matchups, I don't think I'd bring this to another tournament. But it's really fun to
unless
work
black
with,
fell off the face of the earth.
Unless black decks and cancels fell off the face of the earth, but whatever. So if you ever want to try it out, it's a really fun deck to play. It's just not at a very high competitive level, so I'd recommend playing something more along the lines with what's currently good, like stealth and whatnot. But anyway, let's get into the deck. So
you're not going to talk about your matchups at all?
I'll talk about them after the fact.
Right.
Some of the matchups I'll talk about based on what I say here. So I picked Reflect because Reflect's the best ruler. I literally have nothing else to say about that. It's just you filter for your combos because this is a combo deck. So you filter hard and you search out your combo pieces and you win the game from there. So Reflect's really good. I have nothing else to say about him. For the Resonator count, I was playing 4 Wind Sprite and 3 Escort of the Fairy King for green Resonators. Wind Sprite is completely essential to getting a turn 2 double Gwiber off if you can open with the nuts.
These nuts.
And Escort is a good replacement for him, also can sometimes be flashed in to give stuff hexproof. And you can flash it in at the beginning of your turn to cheat in Gwiber even harder. So if you really want to try your hand at Cheaty Face, you can use that. All in all, these did their jobs pretty well. For Water Fairies, we got 4 Water Sprite and 3 Queen's Envoy. The Envoy wasn't as important just because it's a 2-3 body. It can block while rested, but that's not really a big selling point. Water Sprite has 21 targets in this deck. There are 21 fairies in this deck. There were only 2 games where I actually ended up whiffing, and one of them was against fairies, and I whiffed real hard. So that was one of my losses, which I'll go into later. But when she didn't whiff, she was great. She kept my hand replenished. She drew cards off of Adombrali. She's a very good card and was able to swing in for some damage as well. 1 black source in the form of Black Moon Fairy. She's really good with Adombrali because not only can you whittle down your opponent with the loss of 400 life, she also keeps your hand big because you go through your hand really quickly as this is a combo deck. So she did a lot of work. She's a 2-2 flyer as well, so again, all these fairies can just kind of swing in for chip damage before you sack them off to Adombrali, which is really, really strong. And then for the last fairies, we got 2 Flame Sprite and 2 Light Sprite. Both of these had different implications. Flame Sprite was to keep aggro in the early game, and if you start swarming a little bit, you can start picking things off with her ability. Light Sprite was really good for late game, trying to stay alive. Really good in time, but I never really got to see it much, so all in all, this lineup was pretty good. Going into further events, I may take out one of these in main Fairy of Sacred Vision, and I'll go into that a little later. For non-fairies, we got 4 Adombrali, the bread and butter of any kind of big, pushy deck. Adombrali is probably one of my favorite Resonators in this entire game, in fact, one of my favorite cards in this entire game. And the fact that he works with so many different elements, and this deck can play this many elements, makes him a really nice pick. He draws cards, produces will, whittles your opponent down harder, can gain you life in a pinch. He's just all around a great card and is deserving of the title Skittles for the Skittle Fairy deck. And then we got 4 Gwiber, who is one of the scariest things for your opponent to see in your hand in the first game. Because the moment you drop a Gwiber after an Adombrali, your opponent immediately gets like Vietnam War style flashbacks to Alice's World format, and may in fact just concede the game there. Unfortunately, nobody got those flashbacks hard enough because a lot of people were playing Black Control first turn scorned me and scorned the Gwibers right out of my hand. So, we'll come back to him when we're not in the black format. It's 29 Resonators. It's a big Resonator count, but it goes along with some pretty standard non-Resonator cards. We got 4 Change the World, Orb is Insane, putting counters, drawing cards, accelerating harder into the game, recovering Reflect to help you clear boards even faster. This card is stupid good. 2 Laevateinn, giving Reflect Swiftness to search out your combo pieces even faster than usual. The card's so unbelievably good, and yeah, it did its job. And then 1 Deathscythe and 1 Horn. Deathscythe was for more aggressive rulers. Chion comes to mind. Sylvia if people are brave. And then the Horn is normally for either control matchups where I need to keep things going a little bit longer, and Necromancy to toss Necromancies back into the deck. That hurts them. And then 3 Wall of Wind for the last spell. Canceling things is really good. Because of Wind Sprite, you can leave up extra will after you've dropped a Gwiber on the turn 2, which is insane, but it can happen. So that card's really good. That's a 40-card main deck. Going into the stones, this wouldn't be a fairy deck without Fairies Memoria. I think I've only whiffed with this card once when I was in the late game, where I tapped it. I had no fairy, so it came in rested. But aside from that very different situation, I have 21 targets to make this thing come in fine, and it pays for all of them. It helps to create the rainbow deck as good as it is. Speaking of rainbows, for Rules Memoria, played the 8 Regalia. To get to this, unfortunately, in some of my matches, I opened with this and 0 Regalia. And that's what cost me one of my games, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then, of course, I got to stick with the namesake with Magic Stone of Deep Wood.
Oh, yeah.
Gotta represent. Obviously, blue and green are the best Adombrali effects. I play 7 green, 7 blue Resonators. So being able to consistently open with those is really good. The Vingolf stuff just came out when we were like 2 days before we entered this tournament. So when I heard that, I was really happy to be able to take out First Flight's Memoria and put in Deep Wood.
Man,
that's the stone lineup.
Number of games where you open double First Flights.
It hurt. That stuff really hurt. Going into the side deck. The side deck was a little disappointing, and I wish I had changed up a little more of it, but I'll go into that later. 1 Deathscythe, 1 Horn. If I'm facing Necromancy, I side out one of the Deathscythes in the main deck for a Horn. If I'm facing the aggro matchup, side out one of the Horns for Deathscythe. Pretty plain and simple, but very effective. I played 1 Protection of the Fairies. This was a last-minute pick, and I'm like, oh, I should have something good against aggro. This was never needed. Don't play this card unless you're playing like Tempo Fairies, where you'd need the buff. 2 Fairy of Sacred Vision. This card would have been insane if I'd remembered that it popped Chance Standbys my first game, because my first game was against Stealth Reflect, and I sided in 1 to clear off Barrier of Shadows until I realized that I could clear off stuff in Chance Standby areas, which was embarrassing, and I need to read these cards better before I go into this tournament. Eventually, I was able to kill off a Flame Trap with this thing, though, which was amazing, because that would have cost me the game against one of my later matchups. And then blue options, 2 Down the Drain and 2 Separation of Body and Soul. Down the Drain did a lot of work against Necromancy, and Separation of Body and Soul, I never really got to see much, but it's really good for the control matches, killing stuff that buffs themselves, or buffing them yourself with Reflect. Both options work well. For matchups they needed it, the 4th Wall of Wind, this was one of the big options I decided to play against in case of Huang Long combos, because on 6 mana, if you Wall of Wind them, that's a very sad Huang Long player. So, it was nice to have that in case I needed it. 1 Final Forfeit, never really got to see this played. Nobody was really playing like stuff like Arthur, so it was never really needed. 1's Wind-Secluded Refuge. I actually put this in a lot. It did a really nice job today. Sunday. Oh my god. Today. Did great today. Being able to cancel anything that targets, because your fairies are so frail, it's really nice to have that extra protection. Force your opponent to think on their feet. So that was really helpful. 1 Silencing Spell in case I faced other combo decks. I didn't, so this thing really never came into play. It was good to have on the side, though, just in case. One Barrier of Shadows. This came in maybe one matchup. Honestly, there wasn't a lot of times where you'd want to make your opponent slow down any bit because it would also slow you down. The chance of not drawing a Blackstone's fairly high because you only have 4 sources of it. So just be careful using this card. And same goes for Black Moonbeam. I didn't end up siding it in a lot. The thought of having to pay 2 to destroy Reflect just wasn't really that good. I destroyed it once, and I prevented his orbs from becoming like a draw factory, which was really nice. But other than that, it didn't really see too much play. I would have probably wanted to side something better, maybe other interesting Regalia. And that's the whole deck. My matchups were first game against Stealth Reflect, the embarrassing loss that I decided to not play any Sacred Visions. Round 2 was against... That was against Fairies, actually. And he opened up Wind Sprite, Protection of the Fairies, into turn 2 Vivian every single game. And I opened with 4 Adombrali, so I couldn't play. And round 3 was against a guy who was very new to the game, who brought a Memoria of the Seven Lands Arla deck with Stealth and 12 Apostles and Ramp and a bunch of things.
Basically just a Battle for Ataraxia draft.
It was cool to see somebody working with it, because he got the Ataraxia off on me and started removing my stuff from the game, and I was like, oh, I might lose this, and then I realized that I was just like, okay, I'll put Gwiber on the board. He already moved something that's light. So I was able to do that. Round 4 was against a Valentina player, the only guy brave enough to bring Val 1.0, which was sick, because he brought Val. He had cheaty face stuff with Were-Rabbit of the Moon, or of the Blue Moon, something like that. It was amazing, because turn 2 he would cheat it in and knock back somebody else's 2-drop. So that was really fun to watch. The deck was really good, but I opened with a lot of answers and actually swung for exact game in our game too. But it was really fun to play against him, and we're friends on Facebook now. He's really cool. And round 5 was against Necrolancy. My game 1, I just couldn't keep up first, just because I didn't have any real options to stay alive. Round 2, I sided in my Down the Drains, and I sided in good stuff that would prevent them from getting me too fast. Opened up no Regalia, and opened with 2 Rules Memoria. So I was playing behind a turn behind for the whole game, and I ended up losing because I couldn't deal anything to any Resonators they were playing, and they constantly had triple Blood Boil. So that hurt. And then my last game was against a kind of a weird Necrolancy where he was playing the new 4/4 that enters the field rested. He was playing the Bloodfire Dragons, which are cool, but it wasn't really that great. It was cool to see him playing it, but that was one of the games where I was able to double Gwiber both games in a row, and that was really crazy. So, all in all, the deck did what it was supposed to do most of the time, except for when it hated me. So, thinking of going back to just pure black decks and not playing any Rulers of Memoria so I don't die anymore. But other than that, this was a really good event. Taught me a lot about what I need to know. Taught me not to bring a combo-oriented deck when the meta is exclusively black control. That was a bad idea. Don't ever do that. And that was basically it. Anything else to say about it?
No, it was a cool deck idea.
Yeah.
He had a hard time figuring out what deck he wanted to bring for the event, so...
Yeah. So I ended up just bringing the thing that I had made myself. It was cool to bring it myself, because a lot of people looked over, saw me drop the Adombrali, and immediately freaked out, and were like, what is this? And I'm like, I decided to bring something stupid. Because the opening can be turn... If you're not fearing the Moonbeam, your turn 2 can be...
You want to show it off?
Sorry, I should show off the combo. Right. So the combo has to be... This is especially good if you're playing against red. I would say that's one of the best ways to get this matchup off.
Because they don't have cancels, they don't have soul hunts. They
Exactly.
don't have anything else to answer it immediately.
So let's say these are the 5 cards. Pretty simple stuff. And if you're opening with Black Moon Fairy, you gotta not open with the Deep Woods. So for the sake of example, let's bring out
You open one of your 8 rainbow stones.
Exactly. Or just open with a Water Sprite and...
Yeah, Water Sprite has all your stones then.
Exactly. So, first turn is tap into the stone, you get the deep wood, after you play the Regalia so you don't get punished. Filtering, blah, blah, blah. And once you're filtered, your hand looks something like that. Play the Wind Sprite with that and pass. Your opponent doesn't have the answer because they're not playing a deck that wants to answer it. They play Lancelot, swing at your face. Put another counter on Reflect. Reflect has... There's no dice. Reflect has 2 counters on it now. So you go to untap, filter again as much as you want, draw into, say, Black Moon Fairy. So you tap for the light. Check it out. 3 counters. So, you tap for the light, play the Wind Sprite, reveal a fairy, add it to your hand, because you always open with a fairy. Sack 2 for Adombrali. Adombrali will then produce the color of whatever fairy is in your hand. We'll say black in this case. Play the Black Moon Fairy, play the Gwiber out, and then you J-activate. So, with this opening, you are completely safe against Interdimensional Escape, you're free against Flame King Shout, any spell below that mana count you're fine against. If your opponent doesn't want to get their stuff cancelled, they'll play a card and pass, toss a counter on, put it to 4, and you search out anything you need for the next turn. So you have total board control with this. This was really nice before I figured out that Black Moonbeam was the thing that shut down this deck hard, if you open with that. So,
yeah, you go for that opening on turn 2, they just Black Moonbeam you off, and then you're going to get Interdimensional Escaped eventually.
Exactly. So instead of that, what you can do now is open up with your other's rules, Memoria.
You tap with stone instead of Judgmenting.
And then you play the second Gwiber.
Yep.
And that is the Cheaty Face opening. I opened with that 3 times in this entire tournament. Every time I did, my opponent looked at me like I was actually the worst thing on the world. And it felt really good, because I basically kind of invented this variant of the deck. I didn't invent the concept, that's old school Grim stuff, but this is my baby, this is what I've been working with, so this is what I brought to the tournament. Had a really fun time playing it, had a fun time putting Gwibers on the field, making my opponents fear for their lives. And yeah, I really don't have much else to say about it.
So that's that.
That's that. The tournament was really good. Shout out to everybody who did really well. Shout out to a lot of the guys over at Outer World, Ryan and Aaron Miles. Those 2 guys are always great. And yeah, that's all from me for now.
So, right. Leave a comment down below if you like this deck, because there's a lot to talk about here.
Oh yeah. Let me know what you think of it, and we will catch you next time. This has been Mike.
And Joe.
Signing out.
Peace.